Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Malia Jones from Dear Pandemic, and I am so delighted to be joined this morning by two of my very favorite nerdy girls. I'm here with Dr. Katelyn Jetelina of, whoops, I almost got them mixed up.
All right.
Dr. Katelyn Jetelina of your local epidemiologist, and Dr. Emily Smith of Friendly Neighbor Epidemiologist. And all three of us are epidemiologists, and I'm just excited to chat about the latest news with both of you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm wearing my Dear Pandemic shirt.
Oh,
you are. I should have worn mine.
Dang it.
I know, I love mine.
It's a pretty purple. I'm good. Thank you.
Very, very pretty purple. Now everybody in the chat is going to ask where they can buy one. You can't buy one yet. I'm sorry. We're working on it. Okay. So question for each of you. What book are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading a scientific communication book, actually, because I was voluntold to teach scientific communication this summer. So I'm developing a whole new course on it. So I'm not reading anything fun, or I don't know.
What one?
Oh no.
Uh-oh, no, it's okay. You don't have to. I don't know is an acceptable answer on this show, so it's fine. You don't have to.
I can get back to you on that.
Also, you have a child under the age of 1, so you don't have to remember things.
Emily,
what are you reading?
Morning.
It could be under 2. I think we can bump that up to kids under 2. It's fine.
I have 2 under 2.
Oh, well then you are great. Your reading is good. I am reading this one, you nerdy girls. That's probably coming.
Oh.
It's called Yale Needs Women. It's the history of how women kind of broke into the Ivy League. Holy cow, y'all. It's so good.
Is it?
And yeah, I'll have to put it in the chat. And I'm rereading this one, Walking with the Wind with Lewis. I usually have like 4 or 5 going at once, but those are my right now.
How do you have time, Emily? I just don't have time to even eat.
Agree.
Well, it's a discipline. I just have to force myself to get off, turn things off and read. Yeah, so it's a discipline for me to do it, and outside. I mean, Texas is pretty weather, so I am outside a lot reading. Malia, what are you reading?
Oh, I read a lot of science fiction. I am reading a nonfiction book too. Right now I'm reading a book called Ramp Hollow, which is a social history of the economy of Appalachia. It's kind of heady, but it's actually really, really good. I'm really enjoying that one. And then I have a 10-year-old son, and he is making me read the Rick Riordan series, the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief series. And so I'm on book 5 of that series right now. It's, aimed at 10-year-old
Out of
boys.
how many?
Well, there are 5 in the original series, and then there's like approximately 10,000 more after that. So
You got a ways.
yeah, I've got a ways to go, but I'm almost to the end of the original series of 5. All right, so I have some more warm-up questions that I kind of just want to ask you since we're here. So here's one. What's the most ridiculous thing you've done in the last 48 hours?
Told my daughter not to eat cat food.
Oh, excellent. Man, that's
Which daughter?
Which daughter? A 2-year-old. My God.
A 2-year-old, yeah, of course.
Yeah, the things we said we would never say, and then here we are. How did that just come out of my mouth? Yeah. 48 hours. What is today? Saturday? I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I've been getting up in the middle of the night to bottle feed a kitten, and so that's somewhat ridiculous. I was up in the middle of the night bottle feeding a wee little kitten, foster kitten that I have.
Oh,
Doing well, poor guy. All right.
Oh, I thought of mine since we're talking
okay.
about pets. I have a wreath on my door, and 2 birds have been making a nest on it. And so we've been watching it. And so I put like a chair so I can actually stand up on it and then look at the nest and stuff. So we've just become a bit obsessed, the kids and I, on
That's
like
fun.
bird watching. Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I need to set up a panda cam, a bird cam for it.
I was just going to suggest that, and then you wouldn't have to be up on a chair looking at it. What kind of birds are they? Do you know?
No.
Random birds. Fair.
I wish I did.
All right, so let's talk about some science stuff too. So Emily, you were on this panel this last week about religion and COVID, and it was hosted by an organization called Religion News Association, or RNA.
I know. I loved it.
And on this panel, the other panels were also national interfaith leaders. So I'd love to know, what are your big takeaways from this?
Yeah, it was, this is my feet being in both worlds of religion and science. So RNA, the religious side saw that as religion news, and my mind automatically went to, oh boy, we're talking about RNA vaccines. We're not, so my big takeaways were how important these conversations are, and also how scary it is to kind of dip your toe into these conversations. And really, I mean, it was very interfaith. It was Christian, there were Orthodox Jews, there were Muslim voices, there were voices just from universalist perspectives and then from atheist perspectives. So to have everybody at the table and make space for that and to give voice for where people are starting from was incredible. It was also centering to hear those voices and how they relate to vaccine hesitancy, because it's not, I mean, when we say vaccine hesitancy from a religion perspective, depending on what church or background you're coming from, it's really easy to bottleneck that into a very small space. And really there's a spectrum. So that means very different things, to whoever you're talking about, and church leaders. So it was good to hear that, because my space is hook, line, and sinker, from my parents to my husband to all of our grandparents, from the Christian faith evangelical perspective. But at the same time, there's a unique thing that we just have to talk about with vaccine hesitancy. The largest group of hesitancy is white evangelicals. Man, bummer. And that is my space. That's my group. I think there are reasons for that.
Yeah, do you know why, Emily?
I mean, I think there's a lot of different reasons. There's white evangelicals, even in that space, are really varied. So you have some that are just dig in. They are not the wait and see group. They're the group that we're never going to get it. But then there's a lot of wait and see people, which is fine. I mean, we meet people where they're at. The problem is those groups overlap big time in churches and Sunday schools and friend groups. And so I am worried about those that believe that the vaccine is the mark of the beast and global domination, right? The vaccines will ruin our immune system so that Christians are weeded out, in a few generations. There's some conspiracies about that. That if we let that voice be the loudest, then the Christian perspective will typically go to that, those extremes. So I'm worried about that. And so that's why it's so important to talk about it, I think, from faith. And I brought my other book. That's one of my favorites that I think all evangelicals should read. It's called A Color of Compromise by Jamar Tisby. And it goes through the history of how white nationalism, freedom, redefining our freedom, not according to Jesus, but according to nationalistic views that are really warped from a biblical perspective, how that actually came into play. And that foundation in history is extremely important when we talk about the pandemic, because you hit 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, that foundation became a little bit more solidified on like privilege and power from a white evangelical standpoint. Then you get to 2020 and you have masking being an issue of freedom And now we get to vaccines being an issue of freedom, but it's freedom defined to a faulty foundation, not to the Bible, that I think has taken root in white evangelicals. So there's a history. I think this is like a 2-hour conversation, but it needs to be talked about in a church.
Wow. I'm going to order that book right now. That's fascinating.
So good.
What are you going to do about it, Emily?
I just keep trying to talk to pastors and faith leaders about it. And, you know, when you read that book, when you talk about the history of white nationalism, what we saw explode at the Capitol, right? There's a messy thread of Christian nationalism, of freedom and allegiance that is not biblical, that needs to be talked about. So I think continuing to have courage and hope that people will listen to it and come to terms that that's not Jesus. And, you know, when you re-anchor it to the Bible, Jesus' first sermon that he said when he went into the temple was, I'm anointed to preach good news to the poor and to the captive, to the margins, not to power and privilege at the time. So I think we need to redefine our freedom according to his words instead of how it's been usurped for a long time. And for a lot of white evangelicals, we haven't heard that story. We weren't taught that story growing up. And so I think it's just going to take some education, some humility. I always tell my white friends in the church, if I say the word privilege and you automatically get defensive, then that's time to just be humble and actually listen to what that word means and understand it.
We're really grateful, Emily, that you're in that space doing this work, because I think it's incredibly important. And you know, you can speak to it with so much authenticity, and I just hope people are listening.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of listening, Katelyn, you watched the J&J meeting yesterday, all 6 hours of it or whatever.
Yeah, it was a long meeting.
Yeah. So a little setup here. Yesterday, the panel that reviews, one of the panels that reviews vaccine safety and makes the recommendation for who should get different vaccines met yesterday to talk about the issues with this rare blood clotting disorder and the J&J vaccine. And these ACIP meetings are public, and I actually did not watch it yesterday. I had something else I had to do, but Katelyn did. So what's the rundown? What's news?
Yeah, it was good. I was long. I think it could have been cut at, you know, it was repetitive. I think it could have been cut in half, but it was good. I mean, they focused on 3 questions, right? Why is this happening? The biological plausibility. And unfortunately, we just don't have an answer for that yet. We have lots of hypotheses and we're working on it, but we unfortunately just need more cases to pop up to see those patterns. And there were more cases that popped up. They said that there's 15 cases now post clinical trial. 7 of them are obese, 2 of them are taking oral contraceptives, so it doesn't look like that's very consistent. And so we need to keep looking at those patterns. And then
and there was still a pretty strong gender and age pattern. That was the one thing that seems consistent.
So, yeah, exactly. So 13 of them were under the age of 50. There was 2 between 50 and 60, all women. There's only been 1 case in the United States that's a male, and he's 25 years old, and he was actually during the clinical trial. And so that's why they don't want to just say no women under 50, because there's actually risk to males. It's just not as big. That was an interesting discussion. And then I thought the best presentation, and I love her so much, is Dr. Oliver at the CDC.
She is my actual hero. I love that woman.
She came out of the gate with like a boss.
She did. That presentation was, I mean, mic drop. I'm telling you, she did this intense risk benefit analysis within the last 7 days or something with her team. And
that's what gets me. Well, one of the things that gets me about her is she is an amazing speaker, and she leads those meetings like, I mean, she is the boss of those meetings. It's amazing.
I love it.
And she also does these like incredibly nuanced analyses, and they happen in like a matter of days. It's really astonishing.
And she's so good at interpreting the data in a I don't want to say fast manner, but in a really productive manner. She went through 75 slides within probably 30 minutes. And I followed every single line of hers. I mean, it was so clear of her message. It was like, I need to take like a public speaking class from Dr. Oliver because she's amazing. I could listen to her all day. Anyways, they did this amazing risk benefit analysis, basically saying, what would happen if we stopped J&J with deaths and cases? What would happen if we continued it for the entire population? What would happen if we limit it to the population? And so, you know, it came out to saying that the benefits outweigh the risks very clearly, just like the EU found last week as well with Johnson & Johnson. And so it was a very interesting discussion, and I'm ultimately happy with what they chose to continue J&J, no restrictions over 18 and up. I think that will allow people to still have choices if they are lucky enough to have a choice. Not a lot of people are lucky enough to have a choice. And then it'll continue getting this easily stored vaccine out to populations that really need it. And so we just have to keep in the back of our mind that there's a very, very small risk. And continuing J&J, we should see about 24 more cases pop up. But the reward to that is we will save about 1,600 lives. So
the 24 or more cases is like the expected number based on the risks that the rates that we've seen so far.
And that doesn't mean 24 deaths. That means 24 blood clots. And the really important thing now is that since we had this huge analysis, physicians now know what to do. So if you come into the emergency department and you have a headache and you had the J&J vaccine within the last 3 weeks, they know exactly what test to order. They know if that test comes positive, what treatment you need. If that test comes negative, what treatment you need. And that should help a lot, which I think is reassuring too.
Mm-hmm. How many it was 24 expected out of how many doses to give out? Do you remember?
24 out of 24 per 1 million, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, it's more like, well, actually, I don't know. Maybe they came up with something new in the meeting yesterday, which I didn't watch. So I'll go with your what you remember.
Yeah, I mean, actually may be wrong on that. But yeah, it's a small risk, but it's still there.
I think it is really that point that you made that, you know, now we know what the symptoms are. This is a treatable condition, you know, treatable, extremely rare condition. And so if you've had the J&J shot within, and you get these symptoms, which are pretty specific, it's a really severe headache, pain in your abdomen or legs, swelling in your legs, any kind of confusion, that you should not wait and, you know, get straight to some help. And, you know, physicians and clinicians are now informed about what to ask about. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the communication part of how rare it is to the deaths and everything that will be prevented was so powerful. Anecdotally, I know that with vaccines, but to hear the benefit. But I got J&J.
I did too.
Oh yeah, that's right. And so your mind games, and I heard this from a lot, y'all probably did too, of your followers of, oh man, I mean, in that age group, I'm a female, I just got J&J. Maybe I have a headache, right? Your mind starts playing on you if it's one in how many million.
Yeah.
But then there's so much worry about it. And I think walking with, especially you followers that are listening, the women walking with you through that of understanding the risk and really hearing what Katelyn said about this is treatable. We know now, what the symptoms and what the treatment is for it. So that made me feel a lot better, even though I know the data. I would get it again in a heartbeat.
Well, I think, you can know the data all you want, but that's this whole separate process from experiencing the fear, right? And I think the fear itself, I mean, I might have said this last week on the live, that I think the fear is actually a bigger public health threat, right? I mean, there are millions of women and men who got this vaccine who are experiencing this fear, that's a mental health issue.
Yeah.
So, I would also really encourage people to try and deal with the fear that they have through mindfulness or reaching out to a professional.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Malia, because there's this thing called mind over matter, right? So you can have, and I experienced this with a traumatic event a couple of years ago, and that you have so much anxiety that you start seeing physical symptoms. And it was physical symptoms, literally, because my mind was kind of really stressed and really worried and really fearful. And so yeah, it's certainly possible. You just kind of have to keep on top of it. And actually, I'll have to drop the link later. One of my followers started a support group for women that got the vaccine J&J in the last 3-4 weeks. And last time I checked, it had a good number of group attendees. And so I loved that you can kind of share those fears and hopefully help each other get through the couple weeks. But yeah.
I saw that they whoever started that was in some of the comments too, and just helping out with that. When we talk about the fear, what I said at the religion conference from a faith perspective is we have to be careful what we come back to the center on, though. Like if you think about it as a spectrum, our preponderance of evidence is over here about the safety and the efficacy. Our fear is way over here. And so, and it's valid. I mean, it's so valid of what we think and feel. I think what we have to do from a psychom perspective, or even who you listen to, what news you listen to, is make sure that people help guide you back over to the jump in the deep end of the wealth of what we know, while still So I was trying to tell faith leaders of sometimes faith leaders, you want to get to the middle when that middle is just skewed.
Right.
And,
yeah. When I was saying, that the fear is a real public health concern, I didn't mean, the blood clots actually are extraordinarily rare. Very few people are going to face this problem, but many orders of magnitude more will be dealing with the fear around it, right? I've also been reflecting a lot on why is it that we evaluate, there's COVID, which is what the J&J vaccine prevents very effectively. That will also kill you, and in fact has killed over 600,000 people in the United States. But we somehow don't evaluate the fear of that in the same way. And I don't know if it's because of a numbers thing or if it feels less personalized because like nobody injected me with COVID, whereas somebody actually did inject me with this vaccine. I don't know, but we really don't evaluate them in our minds on the same scale.
Well, at least with COVID, we've normalized it now. It's not a new thing, right? And so, and it's easy to get lost in big numbers. I do it all the time as an epidemiologist. And I've talked about this before, is and I think it's a protective mechanism as well. You don't want to, it's hard to understand what 600,000 deaths mean and process that. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Something I've been reflecting a lot about lately. All right, we just have a couple minutes left here, so I want to wrap up with kind of some reflection. Emily suggested 2 great reflection questions. So I'm just going to pick one of them. Or looking over this past year of doing, going from being a scientist quietly doing your work in your office to being a celebrity who gets invited to national panels and so forth. What's been your biggest lesson personally?
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
You can go first, Emily.
Okay. I was about to say the same thing. You beat me to that. I have a few thoughts. I think one is at the beginning, I tried to get everything perfect, just like I would with the publication, and spend a ton of time, which I still do. But I've gotten much better at hopefully not being as science wordy. I don't have 18,000 sources on every post like I used to. And so the biggest lesson learned is trying to figure out what needs to be said in one post and then say that, but with humility. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 people in mind that I try to write to every time, and very varied of who those people are. So to keep that in mind, that this is not about winning. We don't win anything if we're right. It's just helping people. So keeping that in mind. I think the second lesson is the cost. The cost that this pandemic has taken on, multiple levels from real lives and family members, but also just with some friends. I mean, we have lost, we left our church. We've lost several lifelong friends through this process, and many others have. And so I was not prepared for the cost that it was going to take. I think on those levels, and a lot of people are stuck. And y'all have probably seen the Adam Grant's latest, I think wasn't it in the New York Times, on languishing? It's this feeling of almost, being stuck of.
That article was like a little too real.
Oh, gosh, it was so good. What to do with this feeling of where do we go from here, and being different. So I am thankful for the cost. I'm on the other side of it, where there's so much more freedom to be, me and the values that I deeply hold. But I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I didn't see any of this coming.
Yeah.
And I still don't. It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
I think Emily and I were actually just on a panel yesterday discussing this. And I think one thing that I've learned is everything that Emily said. I never realized people would want to kill me because I think wearing a mask is good. But I also learned that in scientific communication, you can't make everyone happy. Especially scientists, because it's science. I guess there's this idea that when you translate something to English, I'll say, from a scientific article, there are nuances lost. And to me, the biggest fear and the biggest thing that hurts me is when my peers, when my scientists say I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't include those nuances. But that has to happen to talk to the layman community. And so I continue to tell myself through my posts that this isn't for my scientific peers. Although there's a ton of scientists that follow me, and I'm so grateful that they do. But it's more for that community translation. And I have to constantly remind myself of who my audience is. And that you won't make everyone happy, right? And that's okay. But as long as you can equip them with data and evidence to make their own decisions, that's all I want to achieve. And so I guess that's one of the main things that I have found through this journey, which has been insane.
I love
How
that.
about you, Malia?
Oh, I don't have a question. I'm the question asker. Why are you asking me?
It's just us.
You've learned a lot through
here,
your
right?
pandemic.
I have learned a lot. Yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned personally is that I actually really love writing. I really love, especially plain language writing. I really actually love doing that. And I agree with you, Katelyn. It's definitely a challenge for me to cope with the comments. We get it from both sides. We're either not good communicators or we're not good scientists, right? If you're doing science communication, you're doing both, and you can't make everyone happy. Like, you're not going to do both perfectly because you're doing something in between those two things. But it, especially when my peers make those comments, it really does sting.
It jabs you, man.
Yeah, it hurts. It does.
Oh my gosh.
And I get like, my reaction is, I mean, in general, this is kind of how I am, but I get like mad at them. I'm like, no, you try. It's really hard.
It's very hard.
It is actually really hard. But I think personally, one of the things that I've learned is that I love to write, and I'm really passionate about this idea that plain language communications could start to heal the gap between science and the trust of the general public. I've been working in vaccine hesitancy for years, and I see a lot of potential for better science communications to try and address that. So
potential, there's a massive potential.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think it's one of the main reasons why the United States did so terrible during the pandemic, is this lack of communication, scientific communication, consistent and clear throughout the entire time.
We also have, for a high income country, we have incredibly poor science education. We have really low science literacy.
Yeah.
But that's not something that I can fix. I can fix the other end of it, right? Or at least chip in.
Well, we can get more people in STEM too.
Yeah. Come on, women.
Yeah. And I can help teach it also to younger populations.
I heard yesterday that nationwide applications to public health graduate school programs are up 80%.
Yeah.
Girl, I'm part of the admissions committee for our—
Is it crazy?
It is insane. And not only masters of public health, but PhDs, and then also our MPH program. It is so cool. We need to like hire more faculty because we can't teach enough. We are capping out of all of our classes this summer, and this is going to be huge, I think, for public health. I'm very excited.
I am too. We've seen the same thing at Baylor. I'm excited too, because we've seen, and it's not really all public health. I mean, there's leadership issues too of actually doing what public health is designed to do, which is why I think where we're at right now. But yeah, I mean, there's people now know what epidemiology is, right? We're not skin doctors.
Right. I know. I used to have to explain what herd immunity is. Like I would say I study herd immunity, and then I'd have to say what that is. But now I don't have to. Everybody just knows what that is. It's like on every mind. Well, they kind of don't, but okay, we have to close. I'm really glad that you both joined me. This has been a super fun conversation. I know we didn't answer many reader questions this week because we just wanted to kind of free for all it, but go ahead.
I will answer one question because I am getting thousands of messages about this. We do not know yet about the Pfizer vaccine for adolescents 12 to 16. We are getting, when we know, we will let you know.
But Katelyn, when will we know? I'm just kidding. I don't have my 8-ball right here on my desk, so unfortunately I can't help you out with this, but
we'll know soon. I think we'll know soon. I am very excited to look at that data.
Yeah, I am too. Okay, so we're gonna sign off. I want to thank Bridges for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing for providing the live cart services for our closed captions here this morning. Thanks for joining us, and I'm going to be back again next week. Oh, next week we're going to do a special show where we are actually taking questions from children. So if your child has a question about COVID, please let us know. Our question box is on our website at dearpandemic.org, and you can put it there. we're also going to do a special post to like solicit these questions later this week. So look out for that. It's going to be really fun. One of my very favorite questions ever, a kid asked me if trees can get COVID. And so I was really inspired to do a whole live about kids' questions. Answer, no, they
If
cannot.
she can eat cat food. So yeah, make sure that you keep it to COVID.
No. You can tell her that a panel of public health professionals and moms said no.
If you get one asking if I should not have to eat broccoli 3 times a week, that's from my kids. So just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah. You can say follow what your mom says.
Amazing. Okay. Thanks to you both.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah,
It was fun.
Thanks,
Have
Malia.
a good day.
Bye.
Bye.